So it's not enough to try to instigate a global catastrophe like a war with Iran. Of course, Mike Pompeo, along with John Bolton, is still trying to instigate a coup in Venezuela. I watched a great interview recently with a Venezuelan sociologist in Caracas who was very much, I'm forgetting his name, unfortunately. He was on with Charmony Paris in The Real News. I like her work. He had a strong critique of the Bolivarian government and very much a left critic of Maduro and Chavez. And if you want to watch some example of, I would say in his case, more of a social democratic critique, but someone on the left, someone who absolutely opposes U.S. intervention, but is totally dissatisfied and disgusted with that government, go ahead, and it's worth watching. He still is warning himself, this sociologist, that this action could lead to a civil war in Venezuela. And while he was criticizing some in the U.S. for, in his view, whitewashing Maduro, he still said, of course, your primary obligation is to oppose U.S. imperialism and intervention. So again, without opening all of that up, it's important to just reaffirm that there is no credible person speaking from Venezuela, including ones who might absolutely loathe that government or be critical supporters of it or supporters of it, they absolutely exist, who want a U.S. intervention and invasion. Jeremy Corbyn opposes it because he opposes these types of actions pretty forcefully. And in the last couple of days, Bernie Sanders has strongly sharpened his position on this as well. And again, I absolutely will always give props to Tulsi Gabbard on her Venezuela stance. Here's Mike Pompeo trying to demonize Jeremy Corbyn and Bernie Sanders for trying to avert yet another catastrophe that he's attempting to engineer.
It is disgusting to see leaders in not only the United Kingdom, but in the United States as well, who continue to support the murderous dictator, Maduro. And it is not in either of our country's best interest for those leaders to continue to advocate on the behalf. The Venezuelan people have spoken.
Pause. Yes, they have. They have spoken. They have opposed every single coup action that this government has attempted since 2002. They are not even supporting this Guaido nonsense at a time of unprecedented pressure on them. And if you want to relieve their suffering, lift the sanctions and stop economic and military terrorism. And the notion of Mike Pompeo using the word disgusting to describe anyone else is mind-boggling. He's talking about people who have not said a word in support of Maduro, at least in Bernie's case, opposing a coup. This guy works every day to support a cholera outbreak and bombing school buses and nursing homes and weddings in Yemen. I know that's even beyond pointing out hypocrisy. That's pointing out that you're a fucking despicable, grotesque, less than human thing. But let's finish the clip.
People have spoken. Through their constitutional mechanism, they have put Juan Guaido as their interim president, that he is the duly elected leader there. And Maduro is on borrowed time. And to see American leaders or leaders from this country continue to provide support and comfort to a regime that has created so much devastation, so much destruction. I was in Colombia. I saw those families who had to make choices about whether to feed their children on even days or odd days. That is a direct result of Nicolas Maduro, and no leader in a country with Western democratic values ought to stand behind them.
Then lift the sanctions. It's a direct result of you. This government has put pressure onto banks to not releasing funds that are the Venezuelan government's funds. They've economically terrorized the place. Release the sanctions. Period. That is so, I mean, it's one thing to do the usual typical bullshit where the United States obviously always picks and chooses. It supported death squads and dictators across the planet, and then it condemns other people for their human rights record. We all know this. There's nothing new about this. But the juxtaposition of, by the way, trying to set off, I mean, don't forget Elliot Abrams, the PR man of all of the butchers of the Reagan era, is the point man for this. He's talking about anybody is anything while he is backing the war on Yemen. I would use the word genocide. again, it's not even hypocrisy. There has to be a new word, because, hypocrisy, first of all, doesn't mean anything. And hypocrisy is like a human trait. We all have hypocrisy. We all we shouldn't be moralists with each other. But that is another, that is just a fundamental disconnect. That's just being completely divorced from any sense of self or any moral scope of the world. I mean, it's next level. I don't know if what I'm saying makes any sense, but it's grotesque.
He's not talking about the poor of Venezuela when he says the Venezuelan people, ever.
To say the least.
He's talking about the ruling class.
He's not talking about the middle class. He's not talking about anybody. I mean, I don't even know if he's talking about any actual Venezuelans. He's talking, a handful of pliant right-wing junta people that will do whatever the United States directs them. Because there is, on some level, I think on the left, we can't just support governments just because they find themselves in opposition to the United States, right? Yeah. At the same time, there's no doubt that Iran and Venezuela also just represent ideas that there are places that aren't first world countries that don't acquiesce to the United States. And therefore, in the mindset of people like Mike Pompeo, they need to be destroyed. Yeah. There is something that is so raw and imperialist about it that's undeniable. And of course, there's strategic calculations and so on, but some of it is as simple as that.